Hello, I'm Natalie Martinez, and I'm here with
Dr. Kayla Rodriguez.
And today we're going to talk about mental health and your identity.
Perfect.
Okay, so what are some common misconceptions about mental health that you wish more people understood?
I have three favorite ones. Number one is you need to be strong. I really think that being vulnerable and expressing your emotions is being strong. A lot of times people think that being strong means holding everything inside, but that's not really a definition of strength. My second top misconception that I wish more people understood is that therapy is only for bad issues. Therapy can be for everybody. I honestly think everybody deserves a little bit of therapy and could benefit from a little bit of therapy. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't mean that you have to be in crisis to go to therapy. You can go at any time. And they teach you good coping mechanisms and strategies that everybody could use in just day-to-day life. My last top misconception would be that if you're not happy, something's wrong. And emotions are normal. Everybody feels anxiety when, they're going to do... Most people feel anxiety when there's a big task or a big project. And it's normal to be sad if your dog passes away. That's very normal. Emotions are not bad. Emotions are normal. It's only when it becomes when it starts having an impact on your daily life and function that this becomes pathologic and a disorder. Those are my top three.
Yep. What are some practical coping mechanisms that have helped you personally or others that you know struggle with mental health?
Sure. So this is very personal for me because when I started medical school, I had a really hard time. You're all of a sudden exposed to all this death and dying and illness and injury and, babies die and old people die and everybody dies. And I had a really hard time dealing with that. I had to really discover a lot of things about myself. And also when I had my children, I had lots of struggles with postpartum mental health issues. And there's the breathing mechanisms, the grounding, the motivation, the mindfulness and meditation and taking a walk and listening to music and doing things that you like and drawing, all those things that calm a person are good and they can be coping mechanisms. And my coping mechanisms are different from y'all's and everybody's is going to look different. I really like thought restructuring. This is something that goes by a variety of names, but especially for things like anxiety, sometimes we catastrophize and say, if I don't do this, then my life is over. Yeah. And if I don't get into college, then my life is over. And if I, don't get a good grade on this, then everything's going to be bad. But I think it's really important to identify these unhealthy thoughts and then figure out whether it's realistic and challenge it and put, a realistic thought in its place. So if I fail this test, is my life really over? No, I just can retake the test, or sometimes maybe my career plans will change, but that will not be the catastrophe that my, brain is thinking that it is right now. And sometimes it just happens subconsciously. We have to say something or we have to do something that stresses us out, and we might, start with our body changing what it's doing. Our heart starts racing, we start having trouble breathing, and it's just something that's happening subconsciously. But when you look at what you're actually thinking of and you consciously make an effort to identify that thought and flip it into something that's more realistic and put it into perspective, it can really stop that cycle and help you calm down. That's my personal favorite.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How does social media affect the way we construct our identities, and what impact does it have on our mental health and confidence?
So I'll start with the last part. I think social media is actually terrible for all of us. I think a lot of times we build our identity and our personal idea of who we are, comparing it to other people's. So social media highlights the positives, always. It's always going to highlight the positives, no matter how much stigma on mental health goes away and how much we talk about, how life is not just about positives or highs. And so when we look at that and we're constantly scrolling through and just focusing on all those positives of all these people, it can have an effect on how we think about ourselves. So I do think that social media is terrible in that it focuses on the positives. You don't see the negatives ever. You have, highlight reels and things like that. You don't see the sadness or the anxiety. And it has also been very heavily studied, especially for young adults and adolescents who have a more impressionable brain. This is something that can impact how you're forming your identity, and it can cause a lot of negativity and a lot of FOMO and comparison, jealousy, loneliness, isolation even, and lots of negative thoughts. And the other way is that frequently people are are participating in social media like before sleep, and all that blue light really impacts your circadian rhythm. It pushes your sleep back, and you're interacting with people and liking and commenting, and it's, you're awake. So as the less you sleep, the more poor sleep quality you have, the more that has an impact on your mental health. So I'm not a fan. I'm on it because I have to be, but I think it's very important to have limits and boundaries and set a certain amount of time that you're going to be on it. Definitely make sure it's not close to sleep time.
Didn't know that. How do you think the stigma surrounding mental health has evolved in recent years, and what more needs to be done?
I think we've made lots of strides. I think studies have actually shown that around the 2010 period, huge drops in the stigma that were associated with people who were expressed as having mental health issues were noted. So people who said they had depression, there was less, social withdrawal or stigma associated with them. Now, that's not something that can be applied to all mental health disorders, like especially schizophrenia, things like that still have lots of stigma surrounding it. But I think we're starting to accept more that, there are problems that happen in our brain that lead to anxiety and depression, etc. So I think we've made strides as a community, as a nation and world, but we definitely have more progress that can be made. I think we have to just continue normalizing that emotions are normal. We have to normalize emotions and accept that disease can also happen, and it's not just in our head.
And lastly, what are some signs that someone might be struggling with their mental health but aren't openly expressing it?
Sure. So I think that includes a lot of symptoms. So not most people will not express their mental health issues the same way. So your depression will look different from anybody else's depression, and same goes for anxiety, etc. And it all depends also on what disease, what issue you're struggling with. Somebody who is psychotic and manic is not going to look the same way as somebody who's anxious and depressed. But usually you will see changes in behavior and thinking. So people will start acting differently. They'll be irritable. They'll be sad persistently. They'll be crying a lot. They can be panicky. They can be anxious, nervous, stressed, expressing a lot of stress about things. You can be withdrawn or avoidant, especially in little kids. We see that a lot of them don't want to go to school when school is a trigger for their anxiety or depression. Other things to look for include difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating, either difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, and usually also difficulty concentrating, a change in their movements. Even they move very slowly when there's when there's depression occurring. Things that used to bring them joy and make them happy are not things that they want to do anymore. It doesn't bring them joy or make them happy anymore. There's lots of expression of feelings of guilt, shame, blame. And then sometimes you have people who are really struggling but don't show anything, and they just hide it, and I guess, fake it till they make it, but don't really make it. They're not feeling well, so lots of people can just completely suppress their feelings and emotions. So it really just depends. It's a case-by-case thing.
Thank you.
Of course.